Hello. Well, as they say, or as I say, anyway. Obviously, as you can see, I'm not on Scots Armour's channel for Sunday this evening. I'm not entirely sure. Oh, need to mute that very quickly. Not on Scots Armour's channel for Sunday this evening. Me handy. Upward turtle, like. I need to figure out what the characters are like. I'm not sure because I've not really been active, so I don't know if it's because I wasn't active or if something's happened or whatever. But hope he's all good. Anyway, from that, as you can see, I'm joined by Sensum. He's kindly accepted my wee invitation to come on here. I'm not entirely sure where it's going to go in terms of. I do have some stuff to speak on, obviously. Never a dull moment in Rainbow Unicorn Land, as they say, but in terms of planning or whatever, it's pretty impromptu. With that being said, hello, Sensum. How's it going?
Hello, mate. How are you doing? Yeah, it's another one. People probably getting fed up with me. They probably say I'm like old dog shit on a white carpet. I get everywhere. But
well, it's probably the same for me. To be honest, I think the novelty for me going live it wore off a long time ago. I still remember when No Chance last year, he was the first person to get me go live after the first ever stream I did that, like on Cyborg's channel 2020. But like he advertised it like, "Oh, going live, it's just in the lies." I can't remember who else was in the title. But it was like, "Ooh, suspense," because they never see me going live. And then about a week later, fucking, I'm bored of it. But but. All right. Anyway, how about we go into the chat, see who's who, and go from there. Right, Barty. I will get that song. Yeah, at some point I forgot to get it. Got that Kevin McLeod guy. Sandwich Bar. Hello. Slim, as always. How's it going? It's a duck. Good evening. And that's all that I've commented so far. Well, that's up anyway. So. I think it's only fitting to begin tonight's proceedings that we start off with everybody's favourite climate activist. Why not? Greta Thunberg should. Oh, sorry. I was going to say Thunberg there. How ignorant of me. Greta Thunberg took the stage to read from her script. It's always a script, None of these people can ever speak from the heart, really.
DJ, can I just stop you, mate? Just very quickly. Could you please address it properly? It's Saint Greta.
Oh, I'm sorry. Saint Greta, peace be upon you. So I'm just trying to picture the scene, though. I mean, what do they do at Glastonbury these days? Anyway, it's not exactly like you're going to be off your tits on drugs there. Like it's not like the nightclub scene or a trance festival or anything like that. I don't know what they do at Glastonbury. To be fair, sounds pretty shit. But the only thing that could make it any worse, and it appears, would be to have Saint Greta appear on stage to lecture you about climate change. Can you think of anything worse? Oh, Zelensky, I suppose. I can't believe they both appeared. Fucking Zelensky. I mean, he's becoming a meme. He's actually becoming a meme now. Like, he just appears everywhere. You know what I mean? He's going to be appearing on BBC News around soon. In between Tracy Beaker. Fuck's sake. But did you see the video of him?
I saw him cheesing off, and he was saying like, "Oh, it's been 2 years since you were able to go to the shit fest that was Glastonbury, but things are returning to normal. We here in the Ukraine would also like to go return to normal. So please send lots of billions of UK pounds to the following coded bank account, and I'll see you in another week's time."
Yeah. Oh god, man! I mean, that was what I mean. But the thing is, see when I seen it on Twitter, that's what I saw. Like everybody was kissing his arse. I mean, and I have to highlight this. I mean, you probably don't realise this unless you're Scottish. Davey, you know what I'm talking about. This is a reference to Mary Black. What a cracking name! Big up my girl, Mary Black, in her death suit, rocking those Kit Kat bombs. If you don't know, you don't know. But right. Anyway, so I'll play the wee clip that I found on Twitter, Greta. This is wonderful. So, sorry, Saint Greta. I'll get used to it.
How dare you?
Why is my screen no shady? Oh, fucking laptop telling you. Oh, we're already hitting technical issues. No, we're not. We're fine. Aye. So this was our here. If went to. It's got it. I think my screen should be shading there. Aye. Here's our here.
These crises are the biggest story in the world, and it must be spoken as far and as wide as possible, as far as our voices can carry, and even further still. It must be told in articles, newspapers, in movies and songs, at breakfast tables, lunch meetings and family gatherings, in lifts, at bus stops and in rural shops, in schools, boardrooms and marketplaces, in the fields, in the warehouses and on factory floors, at union meetings, political workshops and football games, in kindergartens and in old people's homes, at hospitals and at music festivals.
Look at the flags, man. Save the bees. And then we've got, I think that's Extinction Rebellion, is it not? What is that? Is it that flag there?
What, the CND one? That's that used to be CND, didn't it? But it's now pink because obviously the nuclear missiles are in the shape of giant fucking dildos
now. Oh, save the bees, though. Bold and brave.
On social media,
climate not trident. I've seen that there.
And on the evening news, on dusty country roads and in the alleys of our cities and towns. These crises are the biggest story in the world.
Well, there was that.
And it must be spoken as far and
you know what I think the worst thing about Greta Thunberg is, St. Greta, is the fact that, you know, she's like the epitome of like everything that's wrong with the entirety of this climate shit and has been for the longest time. I do agree we need to save the bees, but I'm just sick of these people will take like absolutely anything they can and link it to their narrative, you know, same as we need to dredge the rivers of plastic. Okay, I agree. Let's go fuck what to do with climate change. But anyway, but with Greta, she's like, she epitomizes everything that's wrong, because I've read like the narrative that surrounds her in terms of, they say that like she learned about like climate change in school. And because she's got so many like mental issues, like, she's not, I don't mean that in a disparaging manner, I just mean she's got stuff wrong with her, doesn't she? A lot of things. And as a result, it led to her going on to effectively refusing to leave her room for weeks and weeks and weeks on end, because she was so petrified from what she'd been hearing, and then obviously the narrative that pursued after that was, they say that she decided to take it upon herself to go and with the knowledge that she'd learned from school, take to standing outside the council in her area or the parliament, one of the two, I can't remember, with her wee placards, and eventually it gained traction. The real story, though, the first part is correct as far as I'm aware, but the second part is incorrect, because it then later transpired that the guy that just miraculously took the photo of her that went viral, they're all invested in the exact same things as your proverbial Al Gores, etc. But like the point I was getting at is, she epitomizes everything that's wrong with this. How they're prepared to take, or she was a child at the time, this girl that's got all these mental issues, who's also simultaneously petrified of all the climate alarmism that she's been hearing in school, and force, just shove her on all these stages, etc., exploiting her. And I just think it's fucking disgusting. It's been disgusting from the start, But now you see they talk about climate anxiety in schools is at all-time highs. All these children learn about climate change in schools. There's one-sided version of events, there's one-sided narrative, and it's making they believe to themselves that their futures are fucked. And I just think it's all wrong. But then on top of that, the exploitation element of it is, because you see it in Scotland all the time, and it's not limited to Scotland, but you see these kids then taking it upon themselves to go out and protest, and then you get the likes of Sturgeon, John Swinney, or KY Slippery, clamp. Oh, you're doing so well. Oh yeah, I encourage you. Hold my feet to the fire. Make sure that I'm living up to my promises. That shit. These children are reiterating what you have put into the fucking curriculum in the first place. I don't know. Obviously, you've got a similar take on that, like. But what do you think of the exploitation element, like?
Well, for me, right, I mean, why are we listening to an autist truant? You know, before I make any kind of world decision, I'd actually like to have somebody actually finish school. That'd be a good start, wouldn't it? You know what I mean? I mean, she's been banging on about this shit since she was 15. She hasn't done a day school since then. So she must be as thick as day-old porridge. You know what I mean? Or, you know, thick as a castle wall, as they say. But she's all they won't let go, will they? They've always got to try and rake her out where they think the problem is these idiots think that the old climate bollocks has still got traction, and nobody cares. Literally, nobody cares. Nobody gives a shit. Hence why, like we spoke about yesterday, we went through 2 years of shit because that enabled them to put in actions and provisos like emergency laws, which they can just switch at the flip of a hat. Like you saw that Welsh bugger to start talking about climate, but nobody cares. I mean, all you get are these bloody leftist, Marxist, bloody middle class. Well, because they are invariably middle class, you know, bloody rich mummy and daddy types. They don't know reality if it came round and slapped them on the face. So you get these buggers with their, and also once again, you know, when you look at any kind of demonstration, which is sort of on our side of the fence, whether that be about climate or whether it be about lockdowns or whether it be about dissent in general, yeah. So you've got a certain, you know, dissenting element, the minority, sadly. You look at their posters, like these really threadbare back of a crisp box with a bit of, you know, Sharpie pen if you're lucky, or biro, sort of roughly scribbled in biro and filled in with biro. When you see all these, you know, these completely organic, not manufactured at all protesters, they've all got these like bloody carbon fiber fishing rod type banners with the most beautifully printed, not cheap at all. You couldn't afford them, so you just know that they're all paid for, you know. And but the people, like I say, out of a ground force of, say, I mean, they can't muster more than half a dozen. I mean, what we saw there, the people like the BBC and the Grown, they would have said to them, look, I appreciate there's only 30 of you, but could you stand together in one lump? And then what we'll do is we'll get right behind you, and then it looks like there's loads of you, because we know there isn't really, because nobody gives a shit, and everybody's either off listening to bloody whoever's playing, Liam Gallagher, or I don't know who the headline. Oh no, it's that other mental bugger, isn't it? That other fucking autist mental, what's the name? Billie Eilish or whatever her name is. Oh, I'm hip and trendy because I've got green fucking hair. Wow. How brave. You know what I mean? It's like, never mind. But they'll all be over there stoned, watching Billie Eilish, so they won't give a shit what St. Greta in her pigtails is saying. None of them at all. They'll just be, you know. But like I say, you look at all of those banners and that there. Look at the quality of them. They're not organic. They're all manufactured. Now, if the people who are raving those banners haven't been slipped a crafty tenner, look, you know, do you want to make a tenner? Why? What we're supposed to do? Well, can you wave this flag for about 10 minutes over here in Glaston? Yeah, okay. But no more than 10 minutes, because I'll go see Billie Eilish in 5 minutes. All right, yeah, well, it won't be any longer than that. We just need a bit of footage of St. Greta doing a bit of a spin. And then, you know, you see something down in London, you see those exact same carbon fiber rods and that. So they're either give them away, and they're not cheap, you know, they won't be cheap. You know, there'll be a few quid each at the very least. You know, which ordinary people and ordinary movements they couldn't really afford to do. So, you know, 100% it's being funded by George Soros. But for every, let's be kind, but I know it'll be a lot more than this, but for every 100 sort of protesters, there'll only be one of them who's really in the know, one of the real paid for sort of shills. The rest of them will be completely innocent, thinking that, yeah, we're against the man, yeah. So basically the epitome of useful idiots. You know, like I say, you can always tell how organic a particular protest is, or the people who are in them, by the quality of their banners, because theirs are always professionally done. And when it's anything on our side, like, you know, no mandates and no lockdowns, you can tell they've just been knocked up by a person on the back of a Walker's crisp box and a couple of Sharpies.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah, I mean, was there any announcements made prior to her arrival for Saint Greta? Because if there wasn't, and it is genuinely what's being considered, you know, what's the bloody word? I can't even think. She wasn't unannounced guest, if you will. If that's the case, then how would there be people there in the crowd, perfectly positioned?
This is the thing I was going to say, because people say, "Oh, it's just a complete and utter shock." It's she just turned up, or she just decided to come here on to experience the Glastonbury experience. All of the press will have been forewarned. Yes, she's turning up, but don't say anything, because we want it to look like it's completely organic. However, we'll tell you the exact time and place so you can have all your cameras ready to film her. Because like BBC, Guardian had it, ITV had it, GB News even had it. So they all know, all these bloody shills that work in the media and the press. Like I say, the people at Glastonbury's like, "Oh my God, it's such a surprise." It's like, yeah, not to the press. They knew probably a couple of days ago at the very latest. That's why they're all fucking here, you daft bastards. Because if she had turned up and it had been completely organic, you would have seen the odd clip it off somebody's bloody iPhone. It wouldn't have been like, properly done, filmed, an audio recording. It would have been some scratchy, scrapey, wobbly footage of some bloody Billie Eilish follower, who you wouldn't be able to hear what Saint Greta was saying, because all you were getting blasted would be some thrash metal band in the next kiosk or whatever.
Yeah. No, I agree. And while you were talking, I was trying to find a video that isn't news related. Well, it is sort of news. Wait. This is it. I've got, because I did a video on it donkeys ago, so I'm just trying to see if I can get the title of the fucking video. And you wouldn't believe it. Like, I'm pretty sure I've clicked the title out, but it was all these kids in Scotland a few years ago at a climate protest. It was just the stuff they're coming away with. Like, because this is what irritates me the most about it. Is there's nothing organic about any of it. Even with the likes of Greta, you take the media stuff out of the equation in terms of her standing on stage, but just like the fact that what she's saying and what these other kids are all saying, none of it's organic at all. They're just reiterating what they're learning in school. And then she even said it herself on the stage. She said, "Oh, we need to be talking about this in kindergarten." No, we fucking don't. No, we don't. We need to be talking about it in kindergarten. We don't need to be talking about it in school at all. And then you hear like the politicians, they'll say things along the lines of like, "Oh, the youth, they're very invested in this movement," and they say it as if that's a normal thing. Why are the youth so invested? It's because of what they're learning in school. And Greta is no different to that. And albeit, yeah, you're right. Like, she's not exactly been to school ever since this chat for her started. But how did she get into that position in the first place? And Billy Boggs made reference to her parents as well. Yeah, it was actually Antifa being Antifa. It was Red Ice TV did a sort of deep dive on them years ago, and I remember watching that. And I mean, like even the guy that took the photo of her standing outside the council, as I said, see the council or the Parliament, I can't remember, but she was there for weeks. And then this guy, just this random guy, apparently just took this photo and went viral. No. Like the guy, he was like an Al Gore goon. So I can't remember. This was years ago I watched this, but he had links to all the proverbial people. But I'm just trying to see. I mean, I'm really irritated by this because I've got the video, but I don't have the title. So, and it's only a wee clip. But it was just because, like, for example, it was like one of the kids that's speaking on my screen now. I'm 10 years old and I go to a Glasgow Gaelic school. 10-year-old out protesting for climate change. I'm kind of fuck, like, as if they've got anything organic to say. No, they don't. But where's that? So there's Greta. What's it like in England? Is it bad in England in terms of what they're learning in the school, or is this just more a Scottish and Welsh issue?
It's worse, mate. It's a lot worse. And like I say, Saint Greta, you just have to look at what her parents were. Like, her dad's a bloody director, Swedish director, and her mum's famous because her mum represented Sweden in the Eurovision Song Contest. So they're from, the glitterati. So she's from sort of paid for actors and directors stock. So she's, like I say, she's about as organic as Bill Gates's printed bacon. You know what I mean? It's like saying, 15, it's just this 15-year-old girl single-handedly does a protest outside of the Swedish Parliament in, was it 2015? I think it was 2015 when we first, or 2016 when we first clapped eyes on this imbecile. And it was, like I say, it was just this one single lone child with this little protest here, and yet all the world's press was there. Amazing, right? What a coincidence. You know what I mean?
I really wish I could remember the guy's name that took the photo that went viral, that kickstarted everything. Because see, the deep dive. I mean, fair play to Red Ice. I can't remember the last time I sat there and watched a Red Ice stream, but I did used to be quite invested. Sorry, a lot of my time in Red Ice TV back in the day, and they did a deep dive on this specky dickhead that was basically, as I say, Al Gore. You knew them all, photos of him with Al Gore and everything. So it wasn't organic. But then what happened with her, though, obviously it then led on to the sort of climate strikes that took place across the world, all the children protesting. This is what I learned in page 17 in my climate book, the world's going to end, type shit, And then what happened as a result of that, we had the likes of Nicola Sturgeon coming out and declaring a climate crisis because children protested and demanded it so. Yeah, totally organic stuff happening there, totally not manufactured theatre. But it begs belief that so many people can't see that. Does make you question yourself from time to time. Am I wrong? How the fuck can no one else see this? Nicola Sturgeon genuinely declared a climate crisis. It's got one of the first leaders in the world to declare a climate crisis, and she did so because of children protesting. And I'm supposed to take that seriously. Oh, the children have demanded action. I better do something about it. Fuck off, man. Sorry.
Well, it's not as though the children's like a Doogie Howser who goes through medical school at the age of 16. I mean, what we've got is, or certainly at the time, bloody autistic teenage truant. Are we mad? That literally. We've got these 100 sort of professors and that here. Yeah. We've got this 15-year-old truant. What's your point?
Jesus, I haven't seen this guy in a long time. He used to comment on my stuff back in the day when I had 400 subscribers. So Jesus, it's been a while. How's it going? Fucking hell, man. Didn't even realize you were still subbed to my channel. Well, you'll remember the days when I had my channel since 2016 and I could not for the life of me get past 400 subs for 4 years almost. It's fucking weird. But I think there's not much more because I can't get that video. It would have been good to play that, but everybody's on at Separate News. The witch industry or the witches in Scotland are planning to pardon the witches. Well, that's the next thing in the itinerary for the SNP here in Scotland. And remarkably, they've either privated the video or they've unlisted the video, which had Natalie Dawn or Doon, whatever her second name is pronounced. Quite an attractive SNP politician, to be quite honest. I will not lie. She's not the stereotypical feminist with bowl cuts. No, she's pretty damn tidy, it has to be said. But sadly, she's an airhead feminist. But this is what they wish to do next. And luckily, though, I have the video. So, yeah, you're not that fly, SNP. Private your video because it got ridiculed. But Papa DJ here, he's got it. So I'll play this for anybody that's not seen it because it's worth mockery. It has to be fucking said. And, so I can't believe this. I mean, it's just so embarrassing. It really is.
Between 1563 and 1736, more than 2,500 people in Scotland were convicted and executed on the charge of practising witchcraft. The vast majority of those sentenced to death were women. Many of those accused and convicted were also tortured. I'm Natalie Dawn, member of the Scottish Parliament for Renfrewshire North and West, and I'm consulting on a draft proposal for a member's bill to pardon all those convicted under the Witchcraft Act 1563. A pardon would ensure that those convicted as witches are recognised as victims of a miscarriage of justice and are no longer recorded in history as criminals. It is my view that to build a fairer, more equal and forward-thinking Scotland, we must address the historic injustices of our past. I believe that a legislative pardon would also set an example to other countries, including those where convictions for witchcraft are still taking place. My consultation is open now, so please share your views on my proposals.
Quite surprised. I thought we'd been all on the today.
So there's that, but she also she wrote a piece in the Times as well, or for the Times, I should say, which somebody is daft enough to buy, so they can view the articles within it. Either that, or they've got some website that I'm not aware of for them to be able to essentially, what's it called? Sorry, view it without actually paying for anything. But I'll show you that as well, because it ties into what Nicola Sturgeon a while ago, from remember when she apologised to the witches in the International Women's Day. So I'll get onto that in a second. But I'll share my screen again, because here she is in the Times article. Like, as I said, the attractive woman, but feminist. Well, feminism's poisoned her mind, clearly, as it always does, as it always fucking does. So she says here, hurry up. So the estimated 2,500 people who were convicted and executed under Scotland's Witchcraft Act over 200 years deserves to have this corrected. And the bill I am consulting will do this by giving a legal pardon to those convicted of witchcraft in Scotland. As Scotland was the epicentre of witch hunting in the British Isle, it is fitting for us to be leading the redress of this miscarriage of justice. And while this is a historical issue in Scotland, it is important to recognise that this is not a historic wrong in some parts of the world today. Last week, the grandchildren of a 75-year-old woman found her beaten to death with a stone after being suspected of practising witchcraft in India. This underlines why this bill is so important. If passed, we will send a strong message to the wider world, that Scotland does not tolerate this discrimination. I won't read all of it, don't worry, just read this last part. The recent formal apology from the First Minister on International Women's Day was recognised as a statement of intent by campaigners. It was an important first step, and my member's bill will hopefully be the next one. The bill will make clear that the people convicted should never have been labelled as criminals. The pardon will be issued to all of those convicted, of whom 85% were women. This is a gendered issue, and the deep misogyny that motivated still exists, right? So my issue with this is, well, as I stated in the stream that I did on it at the time pertaining to International Women's Day in Sturgeon, is Sturgeon at the time tried to say that they were killed solely because they were women back in the day, right? So it's misogyny. But what she then in turn did from that was she said that the misogynistic attitudes that existed back then, they still permeate across society today. And then this is where it ties into the shit that I always point out, where, they redefine words. Misogyny's rife in Scotland today. What's your proof? Oh, well, see that so-called misogyny from 400, 300 years ago when witches were killed? Well, that still exists today in the form of disparities. And then they will point to these disparities and they will say, there's not enough women politicians or women CEOs. And that's because of, systemic barriers, institutional barriers. And they're based and predicated on misogyny. That same misogyny that killed women back in the day. They leave out the fact that men were also killed historically. Back then, men were accused of witches. In order for this to be, as has been described, as a gendered issue, it would have to be 100% of the time women. For her case to hold any weight, that is, there would have to be 100% of the time that it was targeting women. So the mere fact that some of the time, admittedly not as much, but some of the time it was women, it blows up it blows up the narrative. It blows up the accusation that this was gendered. How can this be a misogynistic issue if some men were accused as well? It's the same thing as domestic violence. I know I'm rambling a bit now, but it fucking irritates me because this is what these feminists do. They get so in charge. How can domestic violence be a gendered issue? How can domestic violence, this is another thing they do, they'll say misogynistic, outdated stereotypes is what leads men to beat up their partners. Okay, if you want me to believe that, then explain to me, why does a woman beat up her male partner then? Why does some woman beat up other women? It can't be a gendered issue when it happens the other way around. But I'll stop rambling now. But so quite a lot to extrapolate from there. But on yourself.
Well, The thing is, I remember when all this nonsense came out, and the channel History Debunked, what's his name, Simon Webb, covered this, and I think David Starkey did as well. But I'm not saying that there were unjust deaths. There quite obviously was, but a lot of the instances where the so-called witches were committed was because they'd killed the husbands and or children. And so people couldn't, I don't know if it says naivety or a Christian thing or whatever, but of its time, so, 17th century sort of morals and beliefs, especially after you've had the Puritan era of Oliver Cromwell. So everything was purer than pure, otherwise you're an evil demon sort of thing. So the notion that any sane person, whether it be a wife killing their husband or children, they couldn't comprehend that as being something that a normal or natural person would do. So therefore, they were either witches or demons. That's the reason why it came about. But even though there was no such thing as a police force there, a lot of places did have sheriffs, which were appointees of the king. And in Scotland, you had what were called magisters. The magistrate and the procurates. And the problem is you've got this sort of 5-year-old redhead who's got the life experience of a fruit fly, who's obviously says all of the right things and has been through the SMP indoctrination school without actually really looking into any kind of history whatsoever. And people seem to think that magistrates and judges and of that kind, sort of across 15th, 16th, 17th century England were just willy-nilly, off with his head, or committed to death, definitely committed to death. It was still, unless there was royal decree, which obviously there would be no royal decree on any of these deaths. These people were tried by their peers in their areas and whatnot. And I'm not saying there wasn't injustices, because there are still injustices today. It happens all the time. But what I'm saying is, it wasn't, the people, just go and hang them. There wasn't, it wasn't as simple as that. They still had to have, witnesses. Now, I'm not saying that some witnesses could neither be bought or would bear false witness, but obviously that's the reason why you had to swear on the Bible, because, if you, as far as those times were concerned, especially just coming off the back of Cromwell's Puritan period, you swear on the Bible and you commit a lie, that's that's a cardinal sin. You'll end up in purgatory. When you die, you won't be allowed into heaven. And people still actually, believed that would be the real case. And like I say, there would be those people who could live with that decision, but they would be so few and far between. So a lot of the stuff was gathered by evidence, and in certain instances, which old throat clearer, what's his name, History Debunked, he there's actually written articles where a lot of these women were caught in the act of murdering or adultery, but it was debauched adultery, they would say, and for acts of debauched adultery. Well, nowadays, if those people were here in modern times, they'd probably be lauded as heroes based on the degeneracy that we get up to now. But like I say, I'm not, obviously, across 2,500 women, there will have been a number of instances, and men as well, because men were tried, obviously, as warlocks or, male witches as well, for similar things. Debauched, debauched relations with a woman, not his wife, that kind of thing. They used to cop for it as well. And, sometimes the biggest cases certainly Starkey mentioned this, the most tragic cases were where the women and the men who were labelled as being witches were actually mentally infirm. So in other words, what we call a bit simple these days, or a bit, retarded, if you like, mentally retarded, mentally incapacitated. And sometimes, because like they're to be taken advantage of, especially, unfortunately, like I say, like young girls. Not that happens now, does it, Joe Biden? But they don't. But these people, evil people, will take opportunity where they see it. Yeah. So what would happen is, like a man would, attack one of these mentally infirm women, and like I say, you've got to think on that. I think 14 was you classed as a woman, and 12 before that, believe it or not. So you've got what was technically called women at the time, mentally infirm. They get caught, and the man would turn around and say, "Oh, it's because she's a witch, and she seduced me as being a witch." Now, those cases are the tragic ones, but they are pretty far away from what this woman here is banging on about. She's saying that they were all, all horrible and all unjust and all this and all that, and being tried as witches. But a lot of them were actually guilty of quite serious crimes. How they were tried as witches is just a naming of them. We would just call them murderers now, but that's a lot of the instances what they were. They were actually murderers.
Yeah, like that comment I highlighted up earlier on said as well. But I mean, as well, it's just. I mean, obviously, it was a much more different time back then. But I think the thing that irritates me the most about it, and I've got a shortened version of Sturgeon's speech from Parliament a few months ago. I just don't know exactly what moment it is in it, so I didn't want to play it. I'm not going to play all of it, because it's something I've covered before, and time's gone on a bit. But just to highlight like the point of how they're taking something, and this will come in. This will be an important point later on as well, actually, through that dickhead Jeff Palmer, Mr. Everything's Racist. But how they take attitudes in the times of old and they try to tie it into now. And Sturgeon did this, and she did, and now there's Natalie woman's kind of following up from it in terms of what she wrote in the article that I shared, and that's what irritates me the fucking most about it. And I mean, when it gets to the actual point, you'll see what I'm talking about. Right, this my skin shading, I think, yeah. So this is
Includes topical questions. The next item of business is a debate on motion 3485 in the name of Nicola Sturgeon on International Women's Day 2022 of Ireland and other EU countries.
I'm just talking. I just don't remember the section where she talks about witches in particular, but I will get
it. Attitudes that have no place in modern society.
Oh, it might be.
Ensure equality for women and girls here at home and across the globe. The bias we seek to break is ingrained. Its roots are deeply historic, and I'll reflect on that point later.
See, right? There's her making the first reference to it. The misogyny that exists today is deep-rooted and historic, and I'll get to that point later. Right? And what's she talking about? She's talking about the witches.
But its impacts are very current, and all women experience it in some way, shape or form.
All women. I mean, this stuff just irritates me to no end, because this is another example as well of how they've redefined words. The way that they've redefined misogyny now. For misogyny used to be contempt for women, right? But the way that they have redefined it now, I mean, it's such a long-winded statement in terms of how it's defined. I can't even remember it to reiterate off the top of my head. I'd have to go and physically look it out. But,
of course, for minority ethnic women, disabled women, trans women, lesbians, the impact is compounded.
Intersectionality.
The bias we must break encapsulates moving for women and girls both the financial cost and undervalued. And of course, the lives of women are still blighted each and every day by an epidemic of harassment, abuse, threats and violence. An epidemic that seems to be getting worse, not better.
Have you ever heard such fucking hyperbole?
That problem is real and it is very current. At a time when women were not even allowed to say,
here we go.
Demanding. That's why I want to focus the remainder of my remarks today on two issues. One deeply historic and one contemporary. but linked by that common thread of misogyny. Before this Parliament right now is a petition demanding a pardon for the more than 4,000 people in Scotland, the vast majority of them women, accused and in many cases convicted and executed for being witches under the Witchcraft Act of 1563. Those who met this fate were not witches, they were people, and they were overwhelmingly women. At a time when women were not even allowed to speak as witnesses in a courtroom, they were accused and killed because they were poor, different, vulnerable, or in many cases, just because they were women.
Just because they're women. Now, I'm not a history buff, but even I know that's absolute shite. But it's almost finished.
It was injustice on a colossal scale, driven at least in part by misogyny in its most literal sense, hatred of women. The pardon the petition calls for would require this Parliament to legislate, and in future this Parliament may choose to do so. But in the meantime, the petition also calls for an apology. After all, these accusations and executions were instigated and perpetrated by the state. And so today, on International Women's Day, as First Minister on behalf of the Scottish Government, I am choosing to acknowledge that egregious historic injustice and extend a formal posthumous apology to all those accused, convicted, vilified or executed under the Witchcraft Act 1563. Now, some will ask why this generation should say sorry for something that happened centuries ago. But it might actually be more pertinent to ask why it has taken so long.
Hot take from Thin Lips. But yeah, I mean, it goes on a bit, but like the point that you heard there, and as she goes on to elaborate on it, it's like she connects, because she's bullshitting. She's making out that these injustices occurred historically because of misogyny, and she then links that to the present day. As you heard her, she said there's an epidemic of misogyny. It's a joke. It's an absolute joke. This country is just a joke. And there's a comment I want to highlight, that really does summarise a lot of people's feelings on it. Where did it go? I've seen it on my Xbox, but it's not popping up here now. Wait, it's from Galileo's tongue. Oh, it's not popping up on my thingy, but he essentially said that people are struggling to feed their families, and this is the sort of shit that's going on in Parliament. Absolutely, yeah. It's a joke. But it's the malevolence that comes with it, because in order, this came at the exact same time in Scotland as the misogyny report, misogyny report, where they redefine misogyny. And now there's recommendations being put in place, and they're going to be doing a hell of a lot more for women to eradicate so-called misogyny across society, the misogyny that they claim has existed since the days of witchcraft, or lack thereof. So, aye. Sensum there, I don't know.
Hello.
It's my I know I ramble sometimes, but sorry, I just had to get that clip. I was doing that. But.
No, well, like I say, the point's complete and utter bollocks, because she lists all these things and it's deep-seated this, it's deep-seated that. I would very much like her to go and study every other sort of established nation of the same period and see what they did. Oh, you find they did pretty much the same fucking thing, because it was of its time.
Yeah.
And this is like, say, how far back in history do you have to go? Just, left to the likes of the evil Sturgeon and all of the wastrels in the SNP, the first time an amino acid subdivided into a fucking living organism, that's probably misogynistic. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
we need to go back 3.5 billion years to the creation event, and then go and stick a finger up to God and say, "You fucking misogynist wazzock."
She does make reference as well to, even that Natalie did the Times article. They make reference to the fact that it still occurs today, in certain parts of the world. And as you pointed out, go around any part of the world at that period of time, and the same sort of thing would have been occurring. One of the arguments that they did actually make during that back and forth was that they acknowledged it was happening across Europe and across the UK, but it was more pertinent in Scotland. That's why we need to go out of our way to apologise. So it's like, fuck off. I'm so sick of the browbeating. But that leads me to, there's a clip I had on my Twitter that I wanted to play, which ties into an STV debate. I don't know if anybody's seen this.
Just a quick one then. So the old SNP, basically, as regards to the SNP party, you're bollocks unless you're a BAME, a rug muncher, or somebody who'll suck up to them, like a Blackford toady, like a Blackford. If you've actually got any kind of true political bones in your body, they won't want you in the party anyway, will they? Because those are not the kind of decent people they want. It's just the SNP is just a shambles of a party. It really is. It's the absolute of all the parties in the country, and I do include the Greens on this one here. I think that the SNP has to be the worst by far.
Yeah, it's like what I said in Ragnar's stream, well, in the comment section anyway, that because they were talking about that RPOW guy was talking about Labour, doesn't want Labour getting in. We're effectively living under Labour here. Like all the fears that like the people living in England have about the Tories being ousted and Labour getting in. I would make the argument that we're fucking we're living under what they fear. The only difference being that the SNP don't have total control. And I mean, yes, by and large, the majority of the parties, if not all of them, they're all the same. I'm not disputing that, but I do agree. And bias aside, it's hard to argue that the SNP aren't the worst. I think maybe the only party that could equally be as bad, but again, they don't really have the power, is what they call, the Welsh equivalent of the SNP.
That's Plaid Cymru. They are just as bad. Like I say, Blackford is the Labour leader in Wales because Wales is still a majority leader, and Plaid gets the odd bit of traction. But even the Welsh people can see Plaid is just saying, "Hold on a minute, everything that we hate about all of the governments, you want to do just as bad, and then 10 times more on top," which is what the SNP are doing. So,
Labour are bad in Wales, but I just think that if they let in that fucking what's he called, that Plaid Cymru, God, but yeah, the SNP on another level. Like, I'm just scrolling down, I post some amount of shit on Twitter. Like, fuck's sake, I'm trying to find this clip because it ties into what I wanted to bring up next. Oh, I've got it. Speak of the devil, he shall appear. So there was a debate that took place on, just for any, this is a segue now, we're moving into BAME territory now. There was I say debates, but it took place a few weeks ago on STV News, and it was Black Lives Matter activist, quote unquote, who's also a rapper. So I really want to find some of his fiery hot beats. I'm sure he's a great, fantastic guy. I'm sure he's going to be the caramel M&M. Who knows? Anyhow, he was there. There was also Sam Boot, who's an anti-racist teacher or an anti-racist activist. So you can kind of get the gist of where we're going with this. But they made the reference to a dickhead called Armour in the clip. And I thought it would also be worth playing what he said to give you an example of what we're fucking talking about, what I'm talking about anyway. When it comes to the redefining of words. So I'll play that first before we go into a bit of the debate. Like, I'm just so sick of it. They'll say, "Oh, Scotland's racist." And what's the proof? Well, let Armour provide you with the proof. As my video on Twitter showcased a wee while ago. Like, so here's it here.
The government, the police, the health service, the various institutions, public institutions in this country saying, we want to be anti-racist, we want equality, we want diversity. Well, have a look at the picture. So very well for those who are saying racism has been defeated. Have a look at the picture. I stood on the steps of the High Court some 20 odd years ago after the murder of Surjit Singh Chokar, a racist murder that took 17 years to get justice. And I said, how many black judges, how many black senior prosecutors, how many black senior police officers, how many black senior executives in public bodies? And the answer still today is pretty much zero. So it hasn't changed that much in reality for the black or Asian or minority ethnic community.
Steps of the High Court in 2000, and I said there was two forms of justice in this country. I said one for the rich and a very different one for black people and the poor. Count how many black judges you have in Scotland. The answer at the time was zero. How many black senior officers do you have in Scotland? The answer was 0. How many black heads of boards and major companies in this country in Scotland that you had? The answer was 0. How many black heads of school do you have? The answer was 0. 22 years later, the answer is predominantly still 0.
And Armour is right.
Oh, wait.
Representation of ethnic minorities in Scottish institutions continues to be a major issue.
So, I mean, I made a video on this documentary a while ago, but I love that. So, he says, Scotland, people in Scotland, well, they like to say it's not a racist country, all right? And then he provides proof. And his proof is some hot take that he had standing on some fucking steps 20 years ago where he points to specific institutions and their lack of BAMEs. So we've moved past the point now where if you open up a dictionary and you see what racism is defined as, treating people as beneath you or whatever, worse to that effect because they're of a different ethnic persuasion. And now we've moved past that to a lack of representation. He then repeats that same spiel in 2 separate interviews, and then the narrator of this shit documentary that I pulled apart turns around and goes, and he's right, the lack of representation. Like, when the fuck did that become the definition of racism? Or when did that become something that was a determining factor of whether or not a country was quote-unquote racist? Whether or not you've got brown and black teachers and brown and black judges and brown and black police chiefs, etc. So the clever malevolent thing that they do by that, they point to these institutions and their lack of diversity, quote unquote. They'll claim that it's racist, and then they'll turn around and say that in order to rectify the wrongs of that and in order to achieve racial equality, we then in turn need to shoehorn in people because they're brown and black. So essentially it's just they've redefined words, but in doing so, it allows them to effectively get what they want. It's opportunism, and I would argue that it's a fucking power grab in many respects. But have you noticed the redefining of words?
Well, like I say, this bloke here, I mean, one of the quotes that Ragnar Ironspear quotes often, and I agree with 100%, and he says this all the time. Whenever you get a chippy fucking moaning twat like this from, some other country, they're not Scottish, right? I don't care what you say. You're not Scottish. I don't care how many generations you and yours have been here. You're not Scottish, right? And, if you want to live and let live, then that's fair enough. But you're continually demonizing the nation that was good enough to give you and yours and your forebears a home back in the day. We didn't have to, although it was forced on us, as we know. And yet all you do is bellyache, and cry racism all the time. And, you guys were probably winning in the early to mid 90s up to about 95. People were predominantly, I mean, I know you're a lot younger than myself, DJ, but
26, bro.
Mid 90s, what they call the sort of the fresh Prince era. A lot of Joe normies, myself included, it wasn't a factor. It literally wasn't a factor. All this crap that we're being now, it literally wasn't a factor. And I think that scared the system, because the system looked and said, hold on a minute, people are generally getting on. We can't fucking have that. We need to fucking sow division and hatred, because these buggers sort of cotton on that we're fucking destroying what their livelihoods and their way of lives, albeit slowly, the long march through the institution and destroying everything they hold dear. They'll probably turn on us. We can't have that. We'll have to sort of start manufacturing ways to turn these people on one another again. Hence, once Blair got in 97, it all kicked off again, and it's escalated. And now, if you've got 2 people in a room, literally, the way these people are working now, you've got 2 people in a room, the left would find a way. 2 people, could be the bestest mates, brothers, never had an argument in their lives before. You leave them in a room with the leftists, within half an hour, they'll be killing each other. Like bloody kicking shit out of each other. That's what the left does, and that's the problem with the left, because the left can never create, it only ever has to destroy. But to go back to what Rags always says, and he's 100% true, and I made that comment in the chat, he's saying, like, you know, all of these institutions here are mainly run by white people. All this institution are mainly run by white. Okay, mush. You know, how many senior politicians in Pakistan are white? Zero, none. How many senior judges or law officials in none? How many positions of power whatsoever in Pakistan are held by white? None. So guess what? You know, fucking live with it or fuck off. You know, that literally is. That should be our response to all of these people now. We should have no shame. The labels that they want to tag on you are absolutely and utterly meaningless because, like I say, you can't have it both ways. We are either the absolute worst country in the world, you know, Scotland, England, you know, the whole of the UK. We're either the absolute worst country in the world, you know, and we really are as bad as these race baiters make us out to be. Yeah. Because if that was the case, there'd be less than half a dozen of them here. And they would probably be in prison. Do you know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. If we literally were as bad as they make out, there's no way that you'd have a Hamza Yusuf or this one or, you know, Armour, whatever his name is, in those positions of power, or that Levi Roots bloke, what's he called? McCampbell or whatever his name is, you know, Eddie Grant, the Rasta SMP or whatever he is. Yeah. You know, if we were as bad or as nasty and as horrible as what they say we are, they literally wouldn't be in those positions of power because we just wouldn't fucking allow it. The fact that they are in those positions and the fact that they've got a platform to start belly aching, you know, biting the hand that literally feeds them, tells you that we're not any of those things. And hence why every single other person in the world wants to beat a path to our country, because once they get here, not only do they know they can't be chucked out, but two, they know they're going to be on an easy ride for the rest of their lives. You know, but when you point that out, you're the bad person. Well, I don't play those games anymore. You know, I just literally don't play it. I would just literally say, well, you're wrong. And if you don't like it, fuck off.
No, I totally agree. Yeah. And I just wanted to highlight as well these two comments. One, PBC, that no one cared when I was at school. There were all sorts of folk in my school. And where was the one I highlighted before that? Agreeing with you from it. So that the cohesion is the biggest problem. Now, sadly, I don't have it to hand, but if anybody remembers the stream from last Sunday on Scots Armour's channel, when we were going over a wee bit of the anti-racist educator, which is a grotesque website, they say, and it's littered throughout the website, but it's said on quite a few occasions that a colourblind society, quote unquote, that's an issue. So, you know, the mere idea of like, oh, integration and diversity being a strength and everybody coming together, the kumbaya shit, even if that was, there is an element of truth to that in terms of if you allow things to play out without your interference and whatnot, and even if you have a little sprinkle of quote unquote diversity, people by and large don't give a shit. Like, you don't give a shit about people because they're black or whatever. But even that's an issue. Even that's a fucking issue. So now they're going after, they claim that's harmful to BAMEs. And they create a lot of the problems that they insist they're trying to eradicate, which leads me to the comment, and I highlighted there, the most racist are the anti-racist. Absolutely. They are the most racist. Because even with what I just said there in terms of they're going into quote-unquote colourblind societies, colourblind schools, colourblind areas, and reinvigorating the talk of race, making people racially conscious, but doing it with a very malevolent reason behind it, and that is to sort of kind of invigorate the sort of racial solidarity with the BAMEs while simultaneously browbeating white kids, Scottish kids in particular, which I can't fucking stand. It's disgusting. It's absolutely abhorrent what they're doing. So I'll play a bit of this. I'm not going to play the whole debate. Quote unquote, I hate debate my arse, but because it's 12 minutes. But I'll show you a bit of what STV. You know what I find funny, right? Is oh shit, I forgot to share my audio. The guy who he's like the STV guy, right? He'll sit and give what's what to the teachers. The politicians when he's interviewing them, and he's quite good at what he does. He's quite good at being a bit of a dickhead. See, when it comes to this, oh my God, he couldn't. I mean, he might as well have just like, take my job. Like, I'm so sorry. Like, he's just a cuck. He totally cucks. So just imagine sitting here and allowing this unchallenged narrative to play out. So I'll skip. This is the rapper. Malteser Eminem. But I'll play this bit first because it's interesting what she says at the start and then what she says near the end.
Than it was when you were growing up here.
Racism is being used to affect our lives at this point.
Well, we'll come back to that. Afia Hagen in London, you say racism in Scotland now is worse than it was when you were growing up here. Are we going backwards?
Mm-hmm. We are going backwards, and that's not just particular to Scotland, that is also particular to London, where I am. And I think that's because of the rise of right-wing politics, which is actually something that's affected lots of parts of Europe and, of course, the United States. A Tory government here in England and a Trump government in America meant that people were emboldened and people felt that they could say whatever it is they want to say, whatever controversial views they had, and whether that was on social media and whether that was in person. People that were holding the views of othering people, that people, that were different from them, were the ones that should be othered. They made it legitimate for other people to do the same thing. And that's why I think we're more polarized than we've ever been. That's why I think we've gone backwards. I would have thought in 2020, because of what happened to George Floyd and the resurgence of a movement that was already 7 years strong, should have been a turning point and should have been a point where the world over people said, enough is enough. Racial justice is something that we need absolutely and something that should be worked on. But in fact, I think we've gone backwards. In fact, I think we're more polarized than ever. If I say something about racism like I'm doing right now, or I've done earlier on this week, the amount of abuse that I will get in my inbox on social media because I will dare to say that racism is worse than it's ever been.
Right, and then this bit.
Yeah, and like Ola talked about, it's about, you can get a seat at the table, but once you're at the table, you don't get anything to eat or drink, and you can't say anything. It's not about equality, it's about equity. It's about taking away the barriers that each person
there it is.
has to make sure that they all get a fair chance in life and they all get the opportunity to progress in the way that they should. Like Zamar said in her article for Hollywood magazine, she said there's no point in having this polite attitude when it comes to racism anymore. And I couldn't agree with that more. We need to take direct action, and that needs to be around racial justice and true equity. And unless people can really understand what those concepts mean and how we put them in place, and like I said, that's taking away or looking at the barriers a person has that affects their chances in life. Unless we do that, we're never going to get to a place of true equality. And I don't think we'll ever get 100% equality. I don't think that will ever happen. We can certainly do the work to improve the way that things are now.
So she started off by talking about racism, right? And we've been emboldened by the Tories and Trump, etc., right? But they keep talking about racism. Then you fast forward to just a few more minutes into this so-called debate, and it changes. The word doesn't change, but the definition changes, because she then starts talking about representation and barriers. So it's still racist. We've got a long way to go, and we need to do more to eradicate the barriers. We need to do more to get more representation. Until such a time as that representation is achieved, then there will still be inequality. There will still be racism. So we've gone. The definition has changed. They're expanding the definitions to encompass so much fucking more, but they still use the old words, and that's what irritates me. You put her cursor up or I mean, do you see what I'm saying there? I don't know if you're still there. Hello?
Yes, mate. Yeah. No. Well, she drops the old the E bomb, the equity bomb.
Yeah.
That's just a fucking race to the bottom, isn't it? That's equity. Basically means you end up with the shittest people, because equity never ever lifts people up. It always drags people down. And in any functioning society, you want the best people in the best positions to serve in those positions that you can possibly get. And by forcing an artificial equity, so in other words, we want to have absolute parity in numbers on this, and this. All that happens is that because all of those people who ordinarily would have risen to those positions organically, you know, literally, and through merit rather than through some bloody, you know, physical characteristic, you know, we're always better off. But whenever you put, I mean, what equity, do you know what equity, these people who come out and start yapping on about equity, right? What they, what they should be really replacing that with, and I know it's sort of a parody that we use quite often these days because it's becoming more real, I should say, every day, is equity means idiocracy. Basically, whenever you see anybody campaigning for equity, they're really campaigning for idiocracy, because you seldom get the best people in those positions. You always get the sort of, well, we've got these 10 people here, and the first 9 are mustard, but the 10th one ticks this box, so we've got to go for the 10th one. So you're getting the 10th able person out of a bunch of 10. And like I say, you know, you want the best people in the best roles. Like, put it this way, I don't want 10th pick as being my fucking brain surgeon. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, there he is, Levi Roots, isn't it? There he is, Dr. John Campbell, Levi Roots.
It's just because he said something that she said at the start of the clip there, but no, equity, obviously, equality of outcome. But no, you're right. It does irritate me because, I mean, it's not exactly like I've said this before, but it's, say you've got, like, because it is a meritocracy, and because of the minority, it stands to reason they're going to be a minority in institutions as well. And I've used this as, it's not exactly a hot take for myself, but it gets the point across. So if you've got 50 people applying for a job and 49 of those individuals are white, and the 50th person is BAME, and they all have to go for an interview, it stands to reason, or just, you know, the laws of fucking average, mathematics, whatever you will, the likelihood is that it'll be a white person that's going to get that job. But it's not because the individual is white, it's because there's 49 of them in comparison to the one BAME, right? But then you got to take a step back. All the whites are competing against each other. All 49 of them are competing against each other for that same job, just the same way they're all competing against the BAME. But that's not how the BAME sees it, or these people anyway, these activist types. They will look at that and go, oh, white person got that because he's white. I didn't get it because I'm BAME. It's not how it fucking works. It really annoys me. The minorities, what do they expect? Oh, institutions, there's a lack of representation. There's not a fucking law. It's not a human right. It's not a God-given right for a representation, quote, unquote. I'm sick of this proportionate representation nonsense. 40 in Scotland, 4% is BAME in the population. Therefore, there should be 4% of teachers that are BAME. That reminds me of another thing I'll play in a second. But this is what this absolute redacted says here. Right, wait for that.
Something about Brexit, because Brexit has been, you know, often it's talked about not as being racist. Well, it is. And it is racist because the 3 main ingredients for the Brexit referendum were, we want to exclude foreigners from having competitions with jobs with us, being the British. And then we want to have rules which have a second-class citizenship for those who choose to stay. And that's what we've got. 3.5 million people who live here who are from the EU countries now have the second-class citizenship that anybody who is from another country other than that has been experiencing. You know, that's why we're in these lower grades in the labour market. That's why we're doing security guarding, cleaning, social care, all the low-paid jobs. That's why we're doing those. It's in the past, in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, I'm not playing all this. Get to the bit.
A misunderstanding of why Thatcherism. I would have thought they would have loved that, but you know.
He called the European Union white Thatcherism, which I find funny. But anyway,
the racism and the anti-foreigner xenophobic sentiment that was very strong down in the south of England was what determined us having that referendum at all in the division of the Tory party. And I'm glad to say that there was less of that xenophobia here in Scotland. There was still a little bit of it. And we can't kid ourselves that as a North European country with a colonial and imperialist history, that we're immune from these nationalistic responses. And in a way, it's akin with what's happening in the rest of Europe. All countries like us, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, they've all had racist far-right backlashes against globalisation.
Yeah. But that was just that point there where he says there's been racist far-right backlashes across Europe, right? And then the woman also said that the that segment that was playing a bit of, which where the fuck? Oh, I think I'll find it, where she made the reference to the fact that we've been emboldened since 2020, with Trump and the Tories. Like they seem to point out these so-called backlashes, the surprise, and people that are against the shit that they're saying, but they just for some strange reason isn't twigging their brain that maybe they're the problem. No, it's bigotry and racism, etc. Far right backlashes, But I just thought I'd put on a bit of Graham Campbell for you there, Sensum. What do you make of that, though?
I don't wanna dance with your baby no more. Is that who that was? Eddie Grant? Was it Eddie Grant? I can't remember if that was him or not. But my comment is, when he comes out with all this bullshit, and he's saying, "Oh, we're only allowed to do the low-paid jobs, and we're only allowed to do that." No, you're doing, and this is the comment I made in the chat. No, you're doing low-paid jobs because that's all you can do, and this is the reality. Because if they had anything about themselves, or even less than about themselves, but sort of made the voices heard, they'd be right up there with the rest of us. You know what I mean? Because and once again, you can't have it both ways. You can't come out and say, "Oh, all the top jobs are reserved for whitey," when you have a UK Parliament in Westminster where 4 out of the 5 top political jobs are held by BAMEs. Fuck off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just a fucking lie.
Well, wait, who's the one that's not a BAME? You mean Boris Johnson? He's got some wee hat ancestry, I'm pretty sure. So, I mean, there's a bit of a question mark over whether or not his class is BAME.
I don't know. Somebody said he's a Turk. Somebody says he's a this, he's a that. I don't care. But, he's a fact.
Yeah, but on appearance-wise, he appears white. Yeah, I get what you mean. The rest of them are, like, you've got your Rishi, as you call him, what is it? Rishi,
you've got Rishi, you've got Pretty, you've got bloody Sajid Javid, you've got, what's he called? Najid Nawaz. Is that what his name is? Sajid Nawaz? But they're, like I say, you can't either. How is, okay then, if it's as bad as what they say, A, how is he an SNP MP? And B, how do we have somebody like Humza Yousaf, who was the law bod and he got his way with, the speech laws, and then they pushed him into health. If this was true, if people from all different backgrounds didn't get elevated to positions of power, then he wouldn't be on a platform saying it, because you literally wouldn't be allowed. So once again, their argument is completely and utterly blown out of the water by virtue of the fact that they actually on a platform and they are given positions of responsibility and power in order to be able to say it. They are literally an oxymoron against their own argument.
I know. No, I totally agree. And then as well, on top of that, especially in the case of Scotland, I'm pretty sure Wales are going down the same route, but I don't know if it's BAMEs that are spearheading it or not. But in Scotland, you've got all these different groups now. Some of them work in government. I will, to Woodland, please remove the image. I will be in a second. I just want one more clip to play out of this. But all these groups that are forming in the back of it, in Scotland, where the education's been reformed. They've got a COVID ethnicity expert group to figure out why BAMEs were apparently disproportionately affected. They've got all these different groups. And I just think if we lived in a society that was even remotely close to how they imply it was, then these groups themselves wouldn't exist. Publicly funded fucking groups, with the main aims being set around prioritizing these people. I think this is the last clip here of her that I'll have to play.
Scotland's a mad. We like to think that we're all Jock Tamson's bairns. There is that equality, but it's clearly not the case, is it?
I think what it is there is sometimes a bit of complacency when it comes to Scotland, because on one hand, we see communities coming together, for example, in Kenmure Street and with Nicholson Square in Glasgow and Edinburgh, where they stopped an immigration raid. And, we want to believe that we're a very welcoming and inviting society, but the reality is, on the other side, we have a black man who was, killed in police custody. That's happening at the moment, where he was on the floor in 43 Second Sheikh Bayou, and he was restrained by. So we have a system just now where the spotlight is on the police and the justice system.
Charges there, and there is an inquiry.
But there is a public inquiry, yes.
But one thing his sister, Sheikh Bayou's sister, said is that she thinks Scotland's now a racist country. Do you agree?
I have to say, when Caddy Johnson said that I don't feel safe in this country and I don't feel safe for my nieces and nephews, every Black and Asian mother, she just reiterated exactly how we feel. Now, I have a young adult son, and when he's out in the evening with his friends in a car, as a mother, I'm worried. I am worried because although I know he's doing nothing wrong, just the colour of his skin is going to attract attention from...
That's all I want to play with that, but whose fault is it, or whose problem is it, should I say, if she feels that every time her child or children go out, she gets worried that there might be racist abuse or whatever it may be? Whose fault is that? Whose problem is that? Is that indicative of our society being racist, or is that the problem of the woman who has got a blinkered view of the world because she lives and breathes anti-racism? It's her fucking problem, just because she believes her children. And the laugh is, if her son, which you mentioned there, went out every time in the car, she would have then in turn started to mention a list of times that he's been targeted by the police. She doesn't. Oh, imagine my shock. So nothing happens to your son when he goes out because it's in your fucking head. This is what they do all the time. And then on top of that, she made reference to Sheku Bayou, which has really irritated me because he's Black and he died in police custody, being restrained. Effectively the George Floyd scenario all over. But the difference being there isn't a video or anything like that. All we've got to go on is what's taking place now in terms of the trial and shit. And the reason that that's been rejuvenated is because of George Floyd. They wanted to figure out one way or the other if it was race related with this guy. But he was out of his face on some sort of legal high. I can't remember the name of it. Somebody in the chat might remember. Davey, I'm looking at you, you big brain. Oh, you Ouija's your big brain. So he'll probably remember it. It was a really weird name, but some legal high, which makes you fucking loopy. He apparently held a knife to one of his neighbours at one point during that day, and he got restrained by the police. So whatever happened. He died. But it must be because he's Black. There's an example that I always used to point to in earlier videos where there was I can't remember the lad's name, and I don't want to do a disservice, but videos were released. Spice, I think it was Spice 42, where he was dragged through the. In fact, I'll get the fucking article up, because the police, the what they call the prison guards in question were never taken to task over it. Nobody's lost their job. Nobody's been convicted or anything like that. But he was dragged through a jail, fucking bollock naked, by these police guards, and he died. I don't know the ins and outs of whether or not he was on drugs or whatever, but the point being, he was on more than just coke and MDMA. He was on some weird drug. But he was dragged through the prison naked, and he died. And none of these people have been held to account. Now, had he been black, be a different case entirely. But the point being that he died in police custody. Right? It's not a racialized issue. It's happens. I mean, these people that have been on the George Floyd train since the start, or had these people that have been on the Sheku Bayou train since the start, had they ran with just a police brutality sort of narrative, they would have had a bit more support than they inevitably ended up with, because the minute you start to make it a racialized issue, you lose support. I mean, George Floyd died because he's black. No, he fucking didn't. He didn't die because he was black. Sheku Bayou, he died because he's black. No, he didn't. And you're not going to be able to prove that. And if that trial comes back and says that Sheku Bai died because of, racially motivated, then that was because of political pressure as opposed to... How the fuck can they prove that? They can't prove it. How can you prove that it was racially motivated? You can't. So why is there Black Lives Matter protests and placards all outside the Sheku Bai trial? Because they want it. It's almost as if they want that trial to come back and conclude that he died due to racism. But I'll get this thing up. This guy dragged through jail. CCTV Scotland. I can't remember the lad's name. Here we go. Got it. I don't know if you know about this case, but yeah, nobody was held to task. Essentially the same setup, police custody, effectively, more or less. But he died, and nobody's been taken to trial. Nothing. Here's shocking images show naked inmate dragged to his death by guards with towel over his face. Fuck off with this. I'm not doing that. Yeah, it just says his final conscious moments at the hands of prison officers. Of prison officers at Sutton Jail who laugh and smile as he's taken away to hospital with fatal injuries. Nobody was taken to task. Now, they would have been taken to task, I think, or there would have been a lot more speculation and skepticism over this if he was black. I think it's pretty fucking rancid if you ask me. Blatantly, something went on there. Why is there not an investigation into this? There would be an investigation into this if he was black. Oh, dead there. Hello?
Sorry, mate. I was typing in the chat.
Anyway.
Yeah, but everything's double standards these days, isn't it? You just have to look at all of the atrocities that get committed. Whenever we hear of, they never ever release the details, and it's the old Coulter's law, isn't it? When they don't say But when you hear of some kind of incident that's kicking off, and you'll see a flurry of reports, and you can literally feel the likes of the Groan and the BBC and all these other wank spaces sort of praying, going, please be white, please be white, please be white. And then when they know 100% it isn't, it all goes a bit quiet over there, and they start suppressing the stories, and then they start rolling out this person wasn't a criminal, they were just misunderstood, and they were the victim type mantra. But if it is the other way around, like I say, you get it for months, if not years on end. Just look at the way that they sort of lionize the criminal Groyd Forge. Yeah. A villain who fucking terrorized women, physically terrorized women, putting guns to the pregnant bellies because he wasn't getting his own way, was only arrested because he was passing off known to be counterfeit money. There was no way he didn't know it wasn't counterfeit because he had the bloke on for monopoly on it. You know what I mean? So the plot turned up to arrest him, and they gave him every single opportunity. Just get in the fucking car and go downtown. Look, we don't want to do this. They did the actions that they thought were necessary, which was now demonized. No, you can't do this, you can't do that. The bloke had a massive lozenge, of fentanyl in his gob, which everybody knows about, doesn't want to speak about. Once again, world news. When you get that nutcase who was going around in America, which was very suspicious, the circumstance where he was allegedly targeting, BAME community people. Once again, it was like, must cancel out gun laws, must do this, must do that. And yet you could go through a litany, including Chris Donald, of instances around the world where if the demographics had been reversed, they literally would be world news for months, if not years, forever. Whenever it happens the other way around. So like I say, if it's our side of the fence, shall we say, it's either racist, privileged, supremacist, all of these buzzwords, which no longer mean anything because they're just bollocks. Everybody knows they're bollocks now. Yeah. And if it's on the other side of the fence, like people blowing the fuck out of Manchester or London Bridge or shit like that, or the shit that was going on in Paris or whatever, it's always framed in the same way. Misunderstood, lone wolf, mental issues. And they're supposed to get a free pass. And you can just, once again, what you showed there, and Woodlander made the point in there. If you're going to act and behave, if you're in a prison and you kick off basically chimp out, shall we say. If I was like say if you're a criminal who's kicking off, I'd expect the police or the prison services to treat you equally fucking poorly as that, irrespective of your colour, your race, religion, or whatever. Yeah. The only difference is when it's somebody from a protected community or protected minority group, shall we say, it's always seen as being wrong. No. How's about, the people in question are wrong? It doesn't matter what the colour is, the way they're kicking off, they are in the wrong. Doesn't matter if they're white, black, bloody sky blue, pink. They are in the fucking wrong. Like I say, they always say that the law should be colourblind, and it absolutely should. But unfortunately, now we've got the inverse of that, whereby anything below a white shade of pale is seen as being a victim, and anything above that is seen as being this evil, demonic, or this, that, and the other. And like I say, you can't. I'm fed up with saying you can't have it both ways. You either treat everybody the same, yeah. Like I say, once again, these people have come out and saying, "Oh, we want equality, we want equality, we want equality, we want equality." Well, they had equality. Like I say, Fresh Prince years, early to mid 90s, the Fresh Prince years. Nobody saw any of this bullshit anymore. And like I say, the thing that scared the system was the fact that people weren't seeing things in those particular terms anymore, and it shit them up. So they had to demonize that cohesion and start doing it the other way. To start artificially putting divisions in that weren't actually there. And now, like I say, this is where we're at now, whereby you've got equality. They got equality in 95, or up between, like I say, between 90 and 95. I would say that would be roughly where everything was, and all the laws were in place. You couldn't, you weren't allowed to discriminate based on sex, race, gender, religious. Your religion or any shit like that, yeah. So that they had equality, but unfortunately, once they got it, the system thought, shit, we need to create more divides because now they've got equality. Oh, hold on a minute. Yeah, what we need to start spinning is equity. What's that then?
Yeah.
Well, if let's say, for instance, you've got a load of our people who would normally be, the right fit for these particular jobs and whatnot, but there might be too many of them because, guess what? We're still a sort of 90%. White country, so you'd expect that. What we need to be doing is telling everybody, oh, that's racism, because there's not there's not a 50% split between white and black in these certain positions. That'll kick off a right old hornet's nest, and we'll throw this term equity in there as well. Let's get them on the equity thing. So we don't give a fuck if it's equality anymore. So the equality to succeed, which is what all these people have. Now, because half of the fuckers can't succeed, we have to manufacture equity by putting them in positions that they're completely ill-suited to do. And I'm not just talking about in terms of racial connotations there. I'm talking about across the board. Like, my classic example is there's absolutely no way that Cressida Dick was ever going to be fucking any good at being medical. She had a fucking farming degree, for fuck's sake. What does that tell you? But she ticked two boxes because A, she was a woman, and B, she was a bean flicker. So she had those two extra things on that.
Oh, what? Sorry?
A bean? Yeah.
What did you call it that?
A bean flicker. She likes to flick the bean.
All right. Okay. Carry on.
So, like I say, this whole notion, but they weren't, they thought, yeah, but even so, things might even then, things might start going back to normal. So it's not enough for us to start dividing people based on race and that. We now need to also do religion. We now need to do sex. And even within the same sex, we're going to have to create these fucking Frankenstein monsters that make up sort of 0.001% of the entire planet, but they become the people with the most say in this the trans communities. It's just absolute bullshit. And the fact that, like I say, if diversity and multiculturalism and all this shit was such a fucking great thing and such a strength, we wouldn't need things like the anti-racist educator, would we?
No, not at all. I just wanted to highlight this from that comment from PVC that I've kept on the screen, because well, I mean, I could spend all night talking about the anti-racism. I've done that 1,000 times on my channel, but this pissed me off in this particular thing, because they talk about what says the racist incidents that are so extreme that they shock everyone in reconsidering the state of racism in education. In order to ensure that these counter narratives are not silenced and forgotten, here are a couple of significant ones, right? Bear in mind, this is based in Scotland, okay? So we have Stephen Lawrence, didn't happen in Scotland. The murder of the Scottish Pakistani schoolboy Imran Khan by 4 white youths in 1998 in Glasgow. Admittedly, I don't know anything about the story, whether if it was race related or not, or if it was just because of Glasgow's knife crime that they did have a serious fucking issue with at one point. It's the Syrian refugee Shabazz Ali stabbed in Edinburgh streets by a white Scottish teenager. Okay, but why was she stabbed? I don't know again the story, admittedly, but that's not the point that I'm going to conclude with. And then they bring up another Syrian refugee who was brutally attacked and filmed by white teenagers on school grounds in November 2018, and whose younger sister later suffered a similar attack at school. Pretty sure that's the thing that Tommy Robinson was referring to a while ago. But then they say here, even though some of these examples come from England, it would be naive to think that Scotland exists in a vacuum, considering the shared responsibility in historically white supremacist endeavours of colonialism and slavery and the non-devolved racialised features of British governance, immigration and counter-terrorism. Right? So in order to showcase their point, right, and if any of these ones that are talking about that occurred in Scotland, again, it kind of goes, whether you're black or white and you're murdered, it's horrible. And if you're murdered for your race or your ethnicity or whatever, again, equally as abhorrent. I'm not disputing that. But my point is here, like, they first of all have to stretch to England to showcase all the racism in Scotland. Where's Chris Donald? Why is Chris Donald not mentioned here? And Chris Donald's not the only one. There was a guy in Edinburgh, I posted on Telegram, my ex at the time, who, well, I was with her at the time, but she brought attention to the story. There was a guy in Edinburgh that was killed because he was fucking, I'm pretty sure he was, what was the story? His name, I can't remember his name, I could get it, but he was white and he was killed by BAME. And lo and behold, nothing about his life, nothing at all about his life mattering or anything like that. But George Floyd, we have to think all about George Floyd. But I've always been irritated by this article in particular, where they don't even bring up Chris Donald at all, Like, again, it's the same thing. If they highlighted Chris Donald and they highlighted like every individual who's a victim of being murdered because of racial motivation, that would be all fine and well. But they don't do that. They'll highlight Stephen Lawrence and they'll have Stephen Lawrence Day, etc., etc. But there's no Chris Donald Day. And I see the argument from people on the opposing side to what I'm saying here, who will make accusations like I'm trying to trivialize his death or exploit his death for his murder, for my own sort of narrative. That's not what I'm doing at all. I'm highlighting the inconsistency. And the inconsistency exists for a reason. The inconsistency exists because of blatant fucking bias. They don't give a shit about whites that are killed by blacks, which happen in abundance. They only give a shit when it's white on black and it's done so they can fucking use it as a means to push their narrative. Just bringing up, I mean, like what we were on about earlier with Sheikh Hubayu, it's because he's black. In the minute any black person does, it's because they're black. But when it's on the reverse, you don't hear a damn thing about it. But I can't stand this website. I could spend all night on it, as I've done a few times. But I mean, the fucking manifestations of racism in Scottish education, academia is so white. Oh, it's so white, apparently. That's a fucking joke. What was I going to do? It kind of ties into something else as well that that wasn't brought up on any of the streams, I don't believe. Yeah, exactly. It's that inconsistency is their tell. This here, where is it? My thumbnails are just fantastic. It has to be honest. I'm very much an artist. But look at this shit, right?
I'd appreciate short and succinct questions and responses. And at question number 1, I call CoCab Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I would like to ask the Scottish Government what its response is to the Diversity in Teaching Professional Scotland annual data report published in May, which states that there is a continued chronic and disproportionate lack of minority ethnic teachers in Scotland's schools.
Cabinet Secretary Shirley-Ann Somerville.
The Scottish Government is clear that the continued underrepresentation of minority ethnic teachers at all levels in Scotland is unacceptable and does require urgent attention. Work is already underway. The Diversity in the Teaching Profession and Education Workforce subgroup, part of the wider Race Equality and Anti-Racism in Education programme, taking forward a number of actions, including working with the Scottish Council of Deans of Education to develop a robust framework for initial teacher education providers to identify and address the barriers which impede minority ethnic student teachers, resulting in them being better supported throughout their journey into permanent posts, and also working with the newly appointed GTCS Senior Education Officer, a post supported by Scottish Government funding, to establish effective leadership at all levels within local authorities, regional improvement collaboratives and schools in order to facilitate improved racial diversity within the teaching profession.
Co-Cap Stewart. I welcome the Minister.
I mean, I won't play anymore because I don't want to, prolong the longevity of the stream by just, dead air and dickheads in our parliament. But my point to that is, look at all the things that woman just listed off there to get more representation. And then they go on here to basically agree that it's unacceptable that there's not more representation in our parliament, in our school, sorry. So I've seen a comment asking what that was about. Well, I don't necessarily know if I actually made a video on it. I have made videos on it in the past, but a new report has come out as of late showing that there's not been much done in terms of upping the representation in schools. So they're complaining that, effectively teachers are too many white teachers. So I'm so sick of it. I'm absolutely sick of it. But that's a little insight as to what's occurring in Scotland at present. So 4%, because it's the proportional representation argument, is it not? Where they say that we need to have 4% of our teachers need to be BAME because 4% of the population was BAME at the time. So naturally, when the next census comes out, and let's just say, for example, it's 8% BAME, they'll have to update that, update their goals, and then it'll have to be 8% of the teaching workforce will need to be BAME, etc. So there is blatant fucking malevolence at play when it comes to the argument of proportional representation, but it seems to be a commonly accepted feature now of Scottish politics, where they design a lot of their goals around trying to achieve proportionate representation, and I just find it abhorrent. But I don't think people are taking it that seriously at present, because the population, obviously, for the time being, is not exactly, it's still in the 90s. Well, we think it's still in the 90s for whites in Scotland. So, but if we play along with this theory, and as the years go on, eventually it'll get to a point where it's 80% non-white. Therefore, 80% of teachers, 80% of parliament, 80% of the police force, etc., will need to be BAME to reflect the population statistics, because until such a time as there is an achievement in terms of that reflection, until that's achieved, then it's not proportionate representation, it's under-representation. And yeah, no chance if you want on, I'll give you the link. I haven't been on my phone or anything really the last wee while to posting that Sunday chat, so I don't even know if you've said anything there. But if you're wanting on, I'll fire the link over. It's up to you. But proportionate representation, once you're taking that sense, unless you're the big brain of it.
Well, it's not proportional, is it? It's over-representation. That's the problem. Then first they want equality, but the equality means the equal chance to succeed, and you've been able to do that for the last 40 years, and you just haven't. So now we move into proportion. We must have, because like I say, when you look back, there weren't always that many people there, and that's because people have the right to choose who they want to vote for. And it's only through mass immigration that you see areas in the likes of Bradford and Glasgow, obviously, and in London, where you're now seeing strongholds of the BAME communities. Like I say, it could be, nobody. You find me one sane person in the right mind, even down in London, yeah, and you could go up to, don't matter who they are, go up to them and say, do you reckon Sadiq Khan's a great mayor? No. Did you vote for him? Yes. Why? Because in-group preference. That's all it boils down to. That's all it boils down to. But when we say that, we say my preference is, you're just racisms. Well, no, because matey boy here, like Diane Abbott, you're not telling me you know, that, what is it? Diane, it's Tower Hamlets. You're not telling me Tower Hamlets can't do any better than Diane Abbott. Doesn't matter if it's a fucking BAME or anybody else. I mean, is that the best you can do? The same with Tottenham with old David Lammy, you know, is that the best you can fucking do? You know, it literally is that you're going to vote him in. And once again, and this has often been said, they will vote along racial lines. Yeah. And that's not me saying that. I'm not some fucking psycho pundit. That's exactly what the evidence is, what the polls say. They all vote along racial lines. However, anybody in this country even goes near that subject, like, you know, well, we're being flooded, so hateful racism, supremacy. No, I just don't like the direction that my country's going in, which is being artificially decimated by evil bastards who, one, will never ever suffer the consequences of their decisions, and two, are doing so at a profit. They literally are taking their 30 pieces of silver because they don't give a shit of the ruins that they leave to our successors, namely our children. And especially so when you look at the likes of Macron, Merkel, Wee Nippy, and Varadkar in Ireland, you know, they're all fucking childless bastards. So literally they making hay while the sun shines in this life because they've got fuck all to leave to the next, have they? You know what I mean?
2 seconds. I was very tempted to demote Davey there from his promotion there with his comments like, come on, fuck. But yeah, I wondered that about Diana, but I mean, you're right. I mean, yeah, they might just vote in an individual because they're black and whatnot, but they're surely going to be fucking better than Diana. Like, that's a good point. But yeah, no, I don't disagree. Yeah, I don't know. That's what I was asking you earlier though about England. Like, I never see this amount of shit coming out of England as I do in Scotland in terms of what they're talking about in our parliament, etc. Like the representation stuff. I mean, the witchcraft nonsense stuff's by the by, but like the representation, I would have expected this to be much more of a prevalent issue down in England because there's a lot more BAMEs within the English population as opposed to Scotland. I mean, they're a very, very, very vocal minority here in Scotland. And I mean, if they're this vocal now, then I don't know what they're going to be like 10, 15 years from now. But that leads me as well to, I wanted to touch upon this. I don't want to go into too much detail on the article in particular, because I think the last thing, bar maybe the COVID thing, to touch upon is the latest teacher training for teachers in Scotland pertaining to anti-racism and whatnot. But I did want to make reference to the article that I found that's in that sphere but not linked to, but they're also the images that I found on Twitter of this fucking guy. It's fucking hilarious, it really is. Have you ever heard of, you've heard of the concept of decolonizing, obviously, but have you heard about decolonizing geography?
No, how would you do
that? You are in for the treat. You are in for a treat, my friend. There's an anti-racist teacher in Scotland who he's trying to decolonize geography, and here's some of his. You know, I'm just trying. I did geography in school, and I was quite good at geography actually until like 5th and 6th year. By that point, I just had lost all interest in school really. With a plethora of personal stuff, but I was very good at geography in 1st to 4th year. My exams showcased that. I was very, very good at it. Like, you know, I just enjoyed the subject in general. But I cannot, for the life of me, imagine being in geography and having my teacher go, right, well, we've talked enough about contour lines and clouds, and let's talk about. Wait, come on, don't do this. Lord, man. Lord, you need to see this. Oh, yeah. let's talk about this for a while, guys. Yeah. Money well spent being at a private school, but yeah, whatever. So developing an inclusive geography curriculum. Right? And I mean, this, I'm not taking the piss. This is legitimate stuff that I'm finding here, because he's in an article, which I'll pull up in a second. But this is just one of the examples of some of the things he talks about with his class. So just trying to picture the scene. You're in the classroom to learn geography, and this is the sort of shit he's bringing up as part of his presentation. You know, developing an inclusive geography curriculum. And then, as learners given the opportunity to draw links between the effects of colonialism and allocations development, So we got misconceptions, up to date. Am I using up to date information? Have I included captions? Yada yada. Terminology, critical thinking, decolonizing, of course. Diversity. Am I showing a variety of images and accounts pertaining to a place and/or issue presented in the class? For empathy, and I hate this as well. You can't teach empathy. If that was the case, then there'd be no such thing as a sociopath or whatever. You cannot teach empathy. So I wish they'd drop that. But have I shown an awareness of the different backgrounds of learners in front of me? Oh my God, just fuck off. Just fuck off. Like, Tamar at the back's black, or brown even. So am I doing enough to make him feel included? We need to spice up this geography lesson because Tamar's brown. How would the people living in the locations I don't know, I've cut that out a bit, whatever. This is the one of his images here. I've got another one. But this laptop's not really that compatible with Telegram, as you can see, because it's now frozen. For fuck's sake. Wait, there we go. So he had one here about migrants, asylum seekers, and refugees as well, because he's really nice like that. But here is his article. I'm not going to go through the entirety of it, obviously, but there was a few things that I just thought were just, what the fuck's he talking about? Like, how we can decolonize geography in schools. Yeah. Then he says here, the rising popularity of geography as an academic discipline came hand in hand with the rising colonialism. Fuck, we're even being blamed for that now. Geographical tools such as shipbuilding, navigation, and I don't know what that word is, I'm not going to lie, were hugely important to the expansion of the British Empire. Geography has traditionally been taught through a Eurocentric. See, this is what I'm talking about here. This is an idea of decolonizing. Geography has traditionally been taught through a Eurocentric Western lens, often failing to explore the voices of communities and people that have been excluded and marginalized, including women. Women? What? And indigenous communities. And even if that was true, like, what the fuck's the marginalization of women got to do with geography? Fuck. But then it goes on and on and on. But there's a bit down here as well. I've just found just these people, honest to God. An attorney finds offensive is slum. It is a negative word which is not fair to the often wonderful people living and working in these communities. Having visited and spent time in impoverished communities in my native country, India. What a shock. Oh, he's from India. Yeah. I believe we should view them as a more community of diverse peoples, many of whom are intelligent and hardworking, but slum does not really allow for that. There is often a sense of solidarity in communities in those localities, and this should be taught too. It's a geography lesson, you fucking dick. But anyway, and then he goes on again a bit more. But there's a section here where he mentions something of importance, I feel. If I could find it. I'm just noticing things as I'm scrolling down again. Teachers need to teach topics that allow students to learn about the experiences of the colonized. It's a geography lesson. Fuck, man. Deconstructing and critiquing colonial power structures and discourse. Yeah. Oh, wow. Oh, Jesus Christ. But then he goes on. Both diversity and global outlook lie at the very essence of geography. It's just stupid. There is a lack of diversity in role models. Oh, yeah. Here we go. Finally, we need a more culturally diverse teaching workforce. It's always the same. It's always the same. There is a lack of diversity of role models and senior leaders in the teaching profession in general, and within geography education in particular. Many BAMEs, especially from disadvantaged backgrounds, lack teachers they can identify with and look up to in the classroom. So obviously, as I've said before, the assumption there is then that BAMEs don't see themselves in the teacher, right? So that makes them more thick and they don't do well in the class because the teacher's black. Would that not then, by that logic, mean if we had swapped the teacher from a white to a BAME, would that not mean that the white children might not necessarily do that well? Would that not be a thing to hypothesize? But then to conclude this, both diversity and global outlook lie at the very essence of this bit here. Sorry, this is even more important in contemporary times as we witness racist offences, white supremacy, and far-right xenophobic politics rising or increasing. Sorry, what do you make of that sense? Has my screen been sharing at all for any of that? I don't even think it had.
Not the Telegram one, but it was sharing for the. But we heard what you said. I mean, you described it perfectly. So.
But just for anybody that I don't know why it wasn't sharing, but while you share your opinion, I'll just show people the things that I was highlighting there. But what's your take on that? I'll just show the screen to these people.
Well, I'm of an age, and we've got a few chaps in the chat who are of a similar age, like the Woodlander and that. And when we did geography, well, first and foremost, I always thought that geography was about where something is, not why something is. You know what I mean? That was I always, I made that tragic mistake of being able to identify, a lot of the countries and a lot of the individual states in America, and countries in South America, some countries in Africa. But obviously that's not important anymore, because obviously just as we've got the totem pole of victimhood, we now also have this sort of the global map of oppression. That seems to be the most important thing. Oh, got this new map here. Look at these red spots here, these highlighted red spots here. Where's that, sir? It doesn't matter where that is, right? That is the most, where you see those red dots, it's the most oppressed places ever. And also, don't call me sir, because I'm gender neutral. That's what you get nowadays off these fucking teachers now. The thing is, when we first started doing geography was sort of towards the end of junior school, so the last couple of years of junior school, and then you had to do it mandatory, I think, for the first 3 years of high school. And a lot of the books and textbooks that we still had, these sort of general geography books, most of them were still fucking pink. So I don't give a shit. You know what I mean? The sun never set on it. So it's like, what's this pink thing? Oh, that used to be a thing called the British Empire. It's like the Commonwealth now. But yeah, we're a bit skint. So we've still got the book. I mean, geographically they're accurate, but well, obviously it was pre the balkanization of the former Yugoslav Republic. Which then did change the sort of European map side of things, but it was pretty much stable. But it was just like, like most of the map was pink. I was like, what does that mean? Oh, British Empire. It was like, look at, and you're looking at this, the center page. I don't know if anybody ever see these textbooks. They were big, sort of A3 size textbooks, and the center page literally was a map of the world. And obviously, when it comes to Norway and Sweden, somebody had to draw the obligatory ball hairs on Sweden and the little sort of Jap's eye and a few splashes coming out on Norway, because it looks like a cock and bollocks, doesn't it? Those two things. And people had put garter straps on Italy to make it look like a leg. That was the things that kids did in those days. Obviously not me. But yeah, like I say, you saw these maps, and the center of the map was this big spread of the world. What's it called? The transformation. What's it called? Mertica transformation, or whatever it is. And and you say, well, where's us? The first time you see that map, well, where's us? Where's Britain? Because you think, with all of the say that we're having, and when you see the news, you're sort of aware that we're quite important, aren't we, on the world stage. And the teacher comes over, that's us there. It's fucking minuscule little fucking speck, and it's pink, and the rest of the fucking world's, or the known world seems to be pink. It's like, oh shit, that's it's pretty fucking impressive, isn't it? And what's the reason why? The reason why a lot of the reasons to why we have these conversations and why we've got this crap like decolonizing geography. Geography is geography. You can't change the physical aspects of geography, but they've always got to find some aspects. But the reason why they always try to find aspects, and it's never, it's either the BAME community or the traitors, if you like, who signal up these things. I still believe, and this is my God's, my hand on heart, my opinion of all of this bullshit that we're going through now. Like I say, we had Fresh Prince era, 1990 to 1995, and then we've had this orchestrated campaign of hate towards the people who, these are literally our indigenous lands. We can't go anywhere else. We're not the fucking foreigners, are we? At the end of the day, we fucking live here. But a lot of the animosity and a lot of the hatred and a lot of the vitriol which is directed towards us, I am certain, is absolutely born of jealousy. That's the only way I can sum it up. Now, you know, that's when you see the way the sort of the hatred manifests itself for these people, it's a lot more endemic than, oh, you did this to us back when. It's more of a, you know, you did this back to us now, and we're jealous of the fact that you were so fucking great, even though when we look on the map, you're just an insignificant little blob, you know, a little blotch in the sort of Eastern Atlantic Sea. And really, we should be ashamed of ourselves for letting you doing that to us across the world. You know, you're too fucking successful. That's why we fucking hate you, because we want to be you, basically. And they can never be us, so that's why they have to put in shit like equity laws to manufacture it. Which, like I say, the only thing that equity laws ever guarantee is a race to the bottom and a guarantee of, you know, idiocracy in government and idiocracy across all industries. So science, engineering, everything, because they will force equity quotas on everything. We're going to end up with a lot of unqualified people doing jobs that they shouldn't really be in.
No, totally agree. Especially when you said there is an element of jealousy, like definitely, and revenge. It seems to stem from that. I get a sense of revenge, sort of echoed in and amongst some of the rhetoric that comes away with it, because they sort of revise history, or they're very selective with their history, and then they push specific narratives, like in order. So when they talk about the British Empire, there was no good that ever came out of the British Empire. It was simply pillaging, raping, resource stealing, etc., etc. And then in turn, it sort of generates a sort of narrative, or sentiment, which is sort of revenge focused. I've noticed that quite often, especially coming from the people that are pushing the anti-racist shit in Scotland. And I love this comment as well. I have to highlight this. White slaves were treated worse. Truth doesn't fit the narrative. Just in the term of white slaves, because there was an article that I covered a wee while ago from one of these anti-racist types, and he was like, "Oh, people don't know where the term pen comes from." It was like, and he tries to say that, like, you know, white people shove like babes, and, like, you know, I can't remember it word for word, so I don't want to put words in his mouth, so to speak. But, you know, he was trying to like act like a big brain. My response, "Oh, well, you clearly don't know where the word slave originates from, do you, dickhead? Because you're not mentioning it. You're not mentioning it, like, you know, Slavic type thing. No, can't mention that. Can't talk about anything bar anything that happens to babes." And I am cautious of the time, sort of. There's two other things that I wanted to sort of touch upon, because it was something that you mentioned earlier, which reminded me of something additional to include. But so I'll show a bit of this in a second, but just to put a bit of context to it, CRER, CRER, they're one of the many anti-racist organisations that work with Scotland, Scottish government. They're actually one of the most prevalent, but they're just not very well spoken of, shall we say. Like, they're kind of work behind the scenes. They've worked with the government on a lot of their anti-racist publications in the past, and they've started working with museums, and they put out a little sort of 3-minute video that kind of summarised what somebody was talking about at their latest conference, which was called Managing Imperial Legacies. Now, I did admittedly make a video on this, but as I've pointed out, I don't know if I've said it. Well, I said it to you yesterday before or after this that stream that I was on, where you're like, that my videos as of late, they're not getting many views at all, which is really pissing me off. Since they started removing my views, I'm presuming from what William said, it might be they're taking away the Telegram views. Like, people will watch my stuff via Telegram shares. They've started taking my views off me, but they're seemingly suppressing my videos as well, even more than they already fucking were, because, like, my videos are struggling to get to like 100 now, which is like, it was years ago when my videos were struggling to get to 100 views. Like, but I'll show this here. So this is their latest program with museums, which is just remarkable, some of the nonsense that we're dealing with here in Scotland. So here's it here. Talking about white supremacy in Scotland, bear in mind, right? I just want to make that white supremacy in Scotland. Okay, but I'm not playing the whole thing, obviously, but there's a bit coming up for anybody that didn't watch my video where they give examples of white supremacy and how it's prevalent in museums. White fragility. Right. Now here's some of the examples of white supremacy. All staff are white. White supremacy. Because the staff in the museum are white. Decision making. Sorry, I have to do this quite quick. It says decision making is based around whiteness. Okay. Museums benefit from wealth, if I remember rightly, extracted from colonial links. The knowledge and experience of people of colour is ignored. White voices are prioritised. There's a lack of transparency. Collection. Not everyone's represented. So the end result is that museums are in a position of power, right? So obviously I won't play anymore, but I love that. White supremacy. What's your examples? Oh, it's white teachers. No, sorry, white staff. They're all white. I mean, fuck off. It's never ending. It's ridiculous. What do you have to say on that? Like, I don't know if you know if you see my video on it, like, but it's a joke.
Well, I haven't, like I say, I haven't seen that one. But when you're saying you're getting a lot of ratio, when I do the streams on a Friday night, because obviously they've gained a little bit of traction because they're not on Bonnie Ladd's channel at the moment until, whether he decides or not to start re-hosting the Amigos News back on his Amigos News channel, but he's busy at the minute. And like I say, they started to gain considerable traction, and then it got throttled. And I did another sort of standalone video called the Accountability Contract video, and before they'd get not great views, not loads of views, because I've only got like I say, after I noticed during yesterday's stream, my massive hit total went up to 737, and then this morning it was back down to 734. So the three scrubs or subs or whatever you want to call them who came on board either were disappeared or they were disappeared, shall I say? And like I say, when the video, the stream that we did yesterday, I think it was on 300 odd views or whatever. But in the metrics, and I wasn't looking at it for that. I was looking for something for somebody else from an old stream, a bit of music, and I called it a look, and it said 289 views. I'm like, well, that's fucking strange, because last night it was on. So you suffer. And the thing is, I think that they've definitely got little shit stains whose job it is to report or to sort of keep on not report, because they can't do us for anything crap that we've said or anything like that. But I've certainly got these little shit stains who sort of say, oh yeah, ratio this, ratio that, because it's not just me or you, it's across our sort of circles and on channels that have a lot sort of higher reach getting throttled as well now. And like I say, it's just one of those things. I don't do this for clickbait and views and shit like that. I do it because of it's quite cathartic getting it off your chest. That's why I do it. You know, fucking it's either this or therapy. So I you know, I say I don't do it for any bullshit like that. But like I say, I've never used that. I've never used the YouTube video editor shit, and it's crap anyway. But I was looking through the list of videos that, you know, or videos and streams, if you like, that were on there, and I goes, oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's interesting. And I went, hold on a minute, that's not right, because I'm certain yesterday it was on like, you know, 300 and some views, and now you're saying it's 289. There's a rabbit off here somewhere.
Aye, without a doubt. I mean, so as I've said, like I don't do it for the views either. Apart from now, see, when I'm covering this stuff, like this is the sort of stuff I want attention
to get out. Yeah,
like the anti-racist
stuff.
I
tell you what, mate, you've got me. You've got me direct. So when you drop any sort of, you know, YouTubey stuff that you want push, I mean, like I say, I'm a hell of a lot smaller than you, mate. But I'll push it out there, and I'll drop the links in Telegram and whatnot. Because, like I say, a lot of this stuff's really important. It's like the accountability contract, and it's also, I did one on the online harms bill. I actually read through that live on a stream what they were proposing to do, and like I say, it was all being driven towards protecting the children. We're doing this to protect the children. The reality is, they didn't give a shit about the children. If they had done, they would have been sorting out the likes of fucking Bradford, Telford, all that over the last 40 odd years. Yeah, but they didn't do shit all about that. So this notion of protecting children, but when you look at how woolly those laws are, it's all designed to protect the system from dissent from the likes of us. So yeah,
no, without a doubt, we'd be appreciated. Like, it's YouTube's been a cunt for getting stuff out for years anyway. See, before this, and the reason I've got this highlighted for a reason, for anybody just wondering. How long have I had my channel for? Since on YouTube since 2016, and from 2016 to 2020, I had 400 subscribers, just around like that. I could not, for the life of me, get anywhere on YouTube at all. But the No Chance gave me a shout out, and I've got a video on my channel. It's the one video on my channel where you will find me effectively simping, where, you know, I thank Calamity and I thank No Chance for giving me shout outs. But I've always found it interesting. In one of the streams that I did, I went on the video to show the level of suppression I'm still facing, because if you looked at how many subs No Chance had at the time of shouting me out in that little video, he had, I can't remember, it was like 3,000 subs, but now he's on to like 7,000 subs or something. In that same period of time, I have got 1,700. Because my thank you came at 1,000 views. So in 2 years since that shout out, I still haven't reached 2,000 subscribers. That's pretty fucking mental. It's fucking mental. I don't know. It's just do not get out there for some reason. But when it comes to this here, the reason I've got this highlighted is because obviously the anti-racist shit in Scottish schools, this was their second webinar that they were advertising. So it says here that this webinar, is about critical thinking, curriculum design, and anti-racist critical thinking. In this webinar, they will share tools to help educators practice critical anti-race thinking when designing the curriculum. So that's why I just like to show you there. Obviously, the webinar is not out as of yet, but this was posted on Twitter by them all, because this is the sort of stuff that they're wanting teachers, and there is teachers that are taking part in these programs. They want teachers to sit and watch this nonsense, and to sort of adapt and, transform the way that they teach. And in time, ideally, they want every teacher in Scotland to have this as part of their training. So I think this will probably be the last thing that I'll touch upon tonight. I'll play this video in just a second, but I just look at this is what was on about my views. Look, 78 views 2 days ago and 88 views 2 days ago. This isn't just not right, because I first noticed that there's a video that I made a wee while ago. If I can find it, then I'll show it. It's down here somewhere, but about nurseries in Scotland. They're gender neutral nurseries, right? So they're promoting the feminist shit in nurseries. and I couldn't get past 100 views in it. This was months ago. There's it there. Gender-friendly nurseries, right? Now, about a month ago, I noticed it finally got to 100 views, and I made reference to it somewhere. I think it was on Telegram because I was sharing it to someone. I was like, "Oh, look at that! It's managed to get 100 views." Then a few days ago, I was just scrolling down to find something, and I noticed this has gone down to 91 or 92. So there was a clear-cut proof that they were taking views, admittedly small amounts, but they're still taking views. But I was thinking though, before that some of my views on my videos, like that, they didn't look great. Like, because I remember seeing more views, and all of a sudden they've just vanished. Then William, he acknowledged. I wrote about it on my community thing. William commented on it and said that the same thing had been happening to him. So it's definitely something fucking going on. And the fact that I'm only getting that 78 in Twitter and 88 views, 96 views. I'm not saying that I was getting no chance type views or a couple of thousand here and there on a good day, but I was getting more than that. Like, and especially when I'm talking, I mean, especially this one here. Not so much the museum thing that I played a bit of, but this one here, this is fucking important stuff, and it's getting no views at all. It's just annoying. It really is annoying, like. But yeah, so where does it go? This is it here. This was part of their webinar. So obviously I made a video on their first webinar here, and I've posted the link to the raw video as well for anybody that wants to go and watch it. If you've got me on Telegram, posted the full video to their webinar session where they're talking to children or teenagers even about anti-racist school clubs. So that's there. In fact, I'll post the link in the chat in case anybody doesn't have Telegram. But then obviously the second webinar is taking place now, but they've not released it for people to view. But they posted one of the resources for people to watch. So it'd be interesting to get your takes on some of the shit they say in here, Sensum, like, because obviously I've made a video on it. But play this and then we'll see what's what. But obviously I'm curious. Keeps fucking getting my words wrong. I am cautious of the time. But so anti-racist critical thinking model for educators and leaders of education for global citizenship education Scotland. So I'll skip through it because there's long pauses to really see what I'm on about. Okay. Okay. So, global citizenship education. Our aim is to bring together a variety of resources and links to help educators and leaders of education successfully embed the values of knowledge, global citizenship, sustainability, and anti-racist education into their daily teaching. Now, the only one out of those three that isn't already embedded into daily teaching is anti-racism as of present. Global citizenship and sustainability, or learning for sustainability, they're already part of the Scottish curriculum. But anyway, here we go. Being anti-racist. Okay. So examples of anti-racism is not scrolling past headlines about racism, sharing stories of racism, building understanding of racism, and learning traditional views and teachings to incorporate new learning based on the lived experience of victims of racism, and questioning and being a critical thinker when judging a lesson or resource. Right? But it's not really that important. Let's get the next bit. Right. Come on. So here we go. We may think that we are being inclusive when celebrating world cultures, but is that the only time you talk about minority groups? There is a danger of negative stereotyping and creating an atmosphere of othering. Do we stop to consider how people of colour are portrayed in our images and text? Instead, we should include contributions of diverse communities across all aspects of the curriculum in a positive and inspiring way. So you got to bear in mind, this is them this is for teachers to consider, take on board going forward with their lesson plans. But do you agree with me, or am I kind of like reaching a bit here? The way I see this bottom paragraph, right, because it's not the first time I've seen it, it's in not so many words. When they say, like, oh, we should be including them all year round, you know, including contributions to diverse communities across all aspects of the curriculum. That's normalizing diversity nonsense, whatever you will. But to me, that sort of screams out, or the malevolent undertone even, is that they are effectively normalizing you know, the diversity that's increasing year on year to Scottish children. That's the way I see that, if I'm being honest. I'm sorry, that's just the way I do. I don't know what you think of that, if you've got anything to say.
It's normalising replacement, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. That's just, I don't know, it screams out to me, because obviously a child or children are going to feel sort of out of place if they're the only 2 or 3 babes in a classroom or whatever the case may be. But it's like they home in on that, they focus in on that and say that we need to start to, you know, teach about their cultures and whatnot all year round. You know, but to me, it's just normalizing it. It's because it doesn't sound so sinister when there's 3 or 4 BAMEs in a class, but when, you know, there's 25% of the Glaswegian school age population that are BAME, start to really wonder what the fuck's going on here. Right. But this is what I'm on with. This shit here, like. So, to decolonize is not about deleting deleting knowledge or histories that have been developed in the West or colonial nations. Rather, it is to situate the histories and knowledges that do not originate from the West in the context of imperialism, colonialism, and power, to consider why these have been marginalized and decentered. Yeah. Traditionally, our curriculum is Eurocentric, thinking about the world and its people from the perspective of colonizer nations. I mean, this is for schools. The fuck, guys? Oh, I don't know. I really don't know. And it's an approach to free our minds. There we go. Injustice, power, and critical thinking. Encourage us to ask why the world is the way it is and who dominates the narrative and why. Oh, oh man. So this is one of the examples coming up of. Right. A framework to help link teaching and learning experiences with a modern, progressive 21st century Scotland. Oh. Okay. Now, what they do here is, as you can see, this is one of their wee models, right? But we're going to go on to start talking about World War II, and then they'll bring up like the French, the British, the American, because they were, you know, predominantly, if not completely white, right? But then they'll bring up like fucking Indian regiments after, and they're like, oh, see, we don't talk about this because of racisms, etc. But it's just when you take that into consideration, why is it missing? Like, why is it missing? Oh, it must be because of, you know, white supremacy, etc. That's the only reason it could be fucking missing. You see what I'm on about. Right. Whose perspective is it from? We promote the European view traditionally, the difficulties of the European people, their challenges, their stories of family being separated, their sacrifices, their celebration, because we're fucking European, that's why. But decolonizing does not mean these stories and sacrifices are not important, but they are not the only ones. This is what I want. So they bring up the Indians and shit, right? It's a myth to think that the wars were won in the backs of the sacrifice of European soldiers and families alone. For the British Empire, India was the jewel in its crown, and their grip was loosening as the independence movement led by Gandhi was growing stronger. But it's a myth that the wars were won in the back of the sacrifice of European soldiers. Vast majority were absolutely European people, but you know, nobody at any point has ever professed this myth. It's not a myth. You know, they're not debunking anything here. Nobody was under any illusion it was solely 100% explicitly white individuals, European people. You see what I mean? It really irritates me. Like, and not like the jewel in its crown. Fuck off. The world's largest volunteer army. Why is it missing? See, and this is their explanation as to why. This is what I'm all about with this stuff. I really can't start it. Our education system has developed in a society based on racism, willing to continue the colonial legacy of oppression over peoples of color and colonized nations. So, I hope you've learned something here tonight, Sensum and chat. The reason that we don't specifically talk about Indian people involved in World War II is because of our education system solely being based on racism and our willingness to continue oppressing people. Did you know that? Or have you had your eyes open tonight, Sensum?
Yeah, well, it's just, well, you know, I won't go on for more, but anti-racist critical thinking is basically critical race theory, yeah?
Yes.
And the reason why they're moving away from that is because Joe Normie is now, his little radar's picked up on critical race theory. And Joe Normie, even in the States where you see he's teaching, you're not teaching my kids that bullshit, yeah? Mm-hmm. So what the left is really good at is rebranding the same evil shit, but under a different nomenclature, which would, in this case, is anti-racist critical thinking. Now, for me personally, I'm all for critical thinking, but they can't do that because if kids were allowed to think logically and critically, then there's no way that kids would fall for their bullshit. There's no way they'd be able to indoctrinate them. Yeah. And this, you know, when they bring up those pictures of the, you know, the black GIs and whatnot, that's straw manning at its finest. They always show the one photo that's the exception rather than the rule, but then conflate it and make it sound that that was always the rule all along, which is just complete and utter bullshit.
No, totally agree. Especially with the rebranding, because that's probably the perfect way to sort of conclude this all. Because this is how they're rebranding it now. It's called racial literacy now, as opposed to critical race theory. And this is where a lot of this is all deriving from. This woman here in particular, as I've highlighted 1,000 times before, with her her white tears. She's developed a concept called white tears, racial literacy, racial consciousness, even as it says there. Admittedly, the text is small, but you know, I've covered that 1,000 times before. Anyway. But yeah, so I guess on that note, I mean, yeah, there was the COVID shit to talk about, but does anybody really give a shit about COVID? No, not really. For anybody interested, apparently 1 in 20 have had the virus in the last week. Yeah, okay. Well, don't believe that for 1 second. But aye, 2 hours and 20 minutes, kind of going over the mark a little bit, but not really much else to include there on that note. If you've got anything else you want to add in, Sensum, then be my guest.
I've got nothing else to add, mate. I think it's been a really good stream, and thanks for inviting me on. It was an impromptu thing, but we've had some cracking folk in the chat there, and some cracking observations, as always, that you always get in the chat. And there's a little reward. You might want to play them out with that little badger I've just stuck in the chat. Okay. You might want to play them out with that one there. Don't worry, it's nothing nasty or bad, but it might give the chat a bit of a laugh, and it's it's a good thing to play them out with.
The Telegram chat or
no, it's actually in the StreamYard now.
Let me see. What the fuck?
Hate speech. Humza hate speech.
Wait, okay. Hey, wait, share the stream. I think this should be working. Wait, 2 seconds. No, I'm getting pure muffed up with this.
Humza hates speech. He doesn't mind a fig or two, but Humza hates speech. At the party conference, we nippy at the helm. Blackfoot stuck in Westminster, the rest in lockdown hell. They had a buffet lunch with all those lovely things, but just before the salad bar, they heard poor Humza scream. Oh, Humza hates peach. Humza hates peach. He doesn't mind a fig or two, but Humza hates peach. Humza hates peach. Humza hates peach. He doesn't mind a fig or two, but Humza hates peach. You shouldn't even be here, they heard old Humza shout. You're just a furry nectarine, I think I'll throw you out. You come here in your millions, I wish you were the last. You're not allowed to stay here, cause we were never asked. Oh, Humza hates peach. Humza hates peach. He doesn't mind a fig or two, but Humza hates peach. Humza hates peach. Humza hates peach. He doesn't mind a fig or two, but Humza hates peach. You say I don't belong here, you nasty offy man. Most folks say that they like me, I know you're not a fan. Yes, I am a foreign fruit, that much is very true. But by your double standards, I'm just as Scots as you. Oh, Humza hates peach. Humza hates peach. He doesn't mind a fig or two, but Humza hates peach. Humza hates peach. Humza hates peach. He doesn't mind a fig or two, but Humza hates peach. Humza hates peach. Humza hates peach. He doesn't mind a fig or two, but Humza hates peach. Look, I do not sound like groundskeeper Willie, right? I mean white. No, right. Oh, to hell with a lorry.
On that note, I appreciate everybody that tuned in, and thanks to Sensum, and I'll catch you all probably next Sunday if Scots Armour is about. And until then, adios.